Oh, your mic's not on. Sorry.
Bring your mic on.
Yep, got it. I move that the board determines the following: that the student's actions were deliberately disobedient, that the removal of the student is necessary for the peace and usefulness of the school, that based on these facts, the board hereby expel the student effective immediately for an indefinite period of time, and that the superintendent notify the student and their parents of this action in writing with a copy of these findings, written findings of fact and conclusions. If the student is expelled for an indefinite period of time, a reentry plan will be prepared by the superintendent in consultation with the student and the family. The parents and student have the right to request readmission pursuant to law.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Student is expelled. Next item is adjustments to the agenda.
Couple adjustments to the agenda for the public from the one that went out last Friday. First of all, the addition of the appointment of a school psychologist. And as I shared with the board yesterday, this position has been empty since the beginning of the school year, so it's nice to be fully staffed in our special ed school psychology department. And the other was a generous gift of $25,000 to the backpack program to help feeding students over extended times that they're not here. So those two pieces were added.
Thank you. Next item is public input. The purpose of public input is to provide an opportunity for the public to express their interests, concerns, and suggestions related to matters under consideration by the board. As this is not a public forum, the board will hear public comments without engaging in discussion or offering responses. Speakers must state their first and last name and town of residence before beginning their comments. Each person has up to 3 minutes to speak, provided that they maintain common decency and decorum. Complaints concerning individual students or employees will not be heard at this meeting. Resolution may be sought through the superintendent's office as appropriate. The chair maintains the authority to stop any comments that violate these rules. For further explanation of the rules, refer to Board Policy BEDH, Public Participation at Board Meetings. Is there anybody who wishes to speak? All set? Okay. All right, seeing none, we will move on to election of school board chair and vice chair. Nominations are now in order for the office of chair until December 2026.
I nominate Christina Small for chair.
Second.
They don't need a second.
You actually don't need a second, but thanks, Grace. Thanks, Marge. Are there further nominations? We sure it's super fun.
You can't convince us.
All right, all those in favor? Thanks, guys. All right, nominations are now in order for the office of vice chair until December 2026.
Hopefully I do this right. I would like to nominate Marge Gavoni for vice chair.
Okay, Marge is nominated. Are there further nominations? All right, nominations are now closed. All those in favor? All right. We will move on to superintendent's report.
Thank you, and congratulations to our newly elected chair and vice chair. A couple things I want to share tonight. First of all, I received a letter this week from Maine Department of Education congratulating the adult education program for fiscal year 2025 as being a top performer for programs, adult education programs across the state. And the metrics that are used for measuring that is overall enrollment growth, the completion rate for students who are doing their high set, their post-test rates, and the post-test rate is individuals who pass their high set and then matriculate in a program somewhere else, so that they're not just stopping with their high set, they're continuing on in education. And there's another metric here, which is the data match rate, which is how the records are kept as people continue on from the program. So just congratulations to our adult education program. Sometimes people forget what a resource that we have here in Wyndham and Raymond as far as not only the programs and the extensions that they offer for everybody, but then also helping individuals either get their high school diploma or their high school equivalent, and then shepherding them through to the next process, which is helping them with further training. So congratulations to our adult education program. Also tonight, just want to say a huge thank you to Aaron Gant and our bus driver snow clearing crew. Many of us, obviously, we all experienced the storm yesterday, and many of us were out early this morning cleaning off our cars. They were out at 3:30 this morning clearing off 30 buses, plus another 13 vans, plowing away all that snow, making sure that school was ready and that things open on time. I received a text from Aaron at 4:30 this morning saying things were ready to go. Checked in with Public Works, we were ready to go, and all the buses and vans had been done by then. So I know Aaron has a large crew that comes in early in the morning to do that. Also, just want to say a huge thank you to Mike DiDonato and Bill Hansen and our custodial crews who also were here yesterday cleaning out snow in preparation for today, and then also came in super early to make sure that all of our parking lots were treated, our sidewalks were treated, and that we were ready for the storm ready after the storm. In order to be able to open up for today. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work that people don't see. It's the magic behind the scenes to make sure that our buildings are ready after those storms. Lastly, I just want to say a thank you and a congratulations to Dr. Nickerson and the Windham Chamber Singers. For as long as I've been associated with this district, and I remember the first year I started in this district, the Chamber Singers won the Pride of Vienna, which was considered to be the world championship of chorus, high school chorus. Had a chance to participate in concerts across the United States, including the White House on several occasions, Carnegie Hall. And their one piece has always been American Family Christmas, which will take place this weekend. It will be the last one under the tutelage or the direction of Dr. Nickerson, but also Daryl Moreau, who's been an accompanist, I think, since the very, very beginning. Dan Strange and his wife, Ashley Liberty, who have been flying in every year from Miami for at least the last 15 to 20 years to participate in this program. And then also, I think, for this coming weekend, Norm Lewis, who I think has been the best guest over the years that I've been attending AmFam. I think this is his third visit to Windham High School. Tony winner, just an amazing, amazing talent that's going to be participating with our students starting Friday night and then putting on a wonderful concert on Saturday. So I know it's sold out. It is a huge undertaking to put on this performance year after year. The proceeds from it, I know we've always had questions before, where does all this money go? It goes to do their spring trip. So it's their big fundraiser for that. But it's been a big, big part of both communities of Windham and Raymond for a number of years. And as Dr. Nickerson gets ready to retire this year, just want to say thank you for all of his hard work, and thank you to Daryl, Andy Robbins, who'll be playing drums, former student of mine, Dan Strange. It'll just be fun to have everybody back for this weekend and for a big send-off. It's going to be a great show, so for those of you able to attend, you're in for a treat. I think that's it for tonight.
All right, next item is board roundtable. Who would like to begin? Grace?
Just very briefly, I know I'm a little late in congratulating the cast and crew of Grease, but I did get to see it after our previous school board meeting, and it was everything that I had heard from those that had already seen it. Just amazing, especially the numbers where all of those kids were on stage and did just a fantastic job of the performances. But I apologize, I kept a copy of the program, even though they asked us to return them so they could use them for the next show. But I very much liked the piece written by the director, Mr. Juergens, as far as the value of the arts and the core values that students learn, especially in a theater program, of commitment, persistence, independence, and working with others, just to keep that in mind as we are moving into budget season and are sure that we are understanding how important the world of the arts is for our students. I'm very much looking forward to the Chamber Singers. The kids are just fantastic, and I'm really glad I snagged some tickets, but I was lucky to. I was only an hour into the moment that they were on sale, and I just got a couple. So anyway, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Sue?
I would just like to mention a podcast that's out there that our esteemed superintendent participated. It's the WMPG podcast, and they run podcasts once a week. And he participated in this podcast with Glenn Cummings. And I don't know if any people remember who he was. He was the president of USM, and now he works for the DOE, and for Green Schools. And what was special about this podcast is that Chris got a chance to really talk about the green energy projects that have been going on in this district for many, many years. The boilers that have been 40-year-old boilers that have been updated, and we haven't burned oil or diesel in this district for 5 years now. Talked a lot about what went on at RES, which was amazing, and I saw with my own eyes all those rooms. And also what's happening at the new middle school and the kind of system that they're putting in there, which is like making ice cubes, and I mean, it was just amazing. And it was laid out very nicely, and it was very easy to understand, and it gives anybody that listens to this podcast an idea within, in 20 minutes as to what is going on in this district. Our solar commitment, the money we've saved, $90,000. It was fun, and it was good, and I appreciated that. And so anybody out there in TV land, I would grab it. It's wherever you get your podcasts. I found it on Spotify. It's easy enough, so I recommend highly if you want to know what's going on in terms of green energy and savings to taxpayers, for sure. That would be a good way to catch up on that. Thank you, Chris. It was great.
March?
For those of you who are big fans of Facebook, if you go on, and it's not on your Facebook page now, but if you go on to the Paths or the WRVC Facebook page, you can see all of the great, wonderful things that the students are doing. That's mostly what they post when they post things. It'll be what each program might be doing, and there is a lot of great things on there. These kids have a lot of good opportunities when they leave there to either go to college, start their own business. It's really impressive. I like that they're putting it on there, because it's usually the kids in action, So if anybody gets a chance, just see if you can look those up. And
Jody?
I just wanted to highlight, I hope everyone had a chance to read the article on November 21st that Lorraine Glausick wrote on Jordan Small Middle School piloting the outdoor education program here. I encourage everyone to take a look at that. The really cool thing about this, having met with Mr. Bloom earlier in the year, by the way, his invitation for us to attend those outdoor sessions, albeit early, 7:15 in the morning, it's kind of a drop-in basis, so I was hoping to get in there this in the next week or so. In any case, the cool thing about this is that he had done research over the summertime, meeting with several schools across the state around what they thought was a good outdoor program, and put together a pilot and is rolling with what he believes fits for our district. Leading into the next couple of years, obviously we have a lot of geography here in Raymond for them to utilize on a daily basis, but as the middle school build committee, there's a few of us here on that committee, but just in general looking at the opportunity in the new school for that program to continue to develop and flourish. And I understand the district is working on developing that program, but just wanted to highlight that article. I won't read it, obviously, but it definitely talks about the unique opportunity of this program versus just taking a classroom outside. They're two very different things. And then I also wanted to share some feedback that he had requested some maple trees be planted at the new school for that project. So I'm not sure how that comes together. Probably could have talked about that at another time, but just in general, that's the cool thing about thinking about this so far in advance is, are there any maple trees on the new property so that we could tap the maples for some of the projects that we've heard about in the past. So just want to share that. That was on November 21st.
I'm a big fan of trees, Jody, so I'm not going to let him forget that one. Anyone else? All right, we can move on to committee reports. Finance?
So Finance will meet next Tuesday, December the 9th at 9:30 at Central Office. We've not met since our last meeting. We'll be focusing a lot on the budget timeline, looking at some things from capital reserve, and then our standing agenda items on financial updates and middle school spending. Thank you.
Facilities?
We have not met, but I just want to remind everybody that the finance, facility, policy, and curriculum minutes to their meetings are on our website. If you want to, Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about how the budget's going to go on to the, because we've had the pieces in the paper, how your budget, how we're going to communicate to the public on the budget. I know you did it before, but just to keep reminding them.
Yeah, so Marge is asking about budget education for the public. In our next meeting, that is one of the agenda items that will be on the Finance Committee meeting, is going over hopefully a final draft of an infographic and information sharing document about spending and revenues in RSU 14, which we hope is helpful in forming the budget. And then from that point forward, the goal will be to provide similar updates and infographics as we go through our budget process to make sure the public is informed as part of one of our major board goals this year. So hopefully that's responsive to your question. Okay, good.
Policy?
Sure. We met this past Monday, December 1st. We continued our work on our policy outlining curricular and co-curricular. We did do some work on our board governance policies. We don't have many of those resolved, but we have a couple for you tonight. We are going to meet again on December the 15th, and I'll leave it at that because we have a number that I'll share about tonight. Our agenda is going to be pretty straightforward. We have one more in the board governance category, and then we'll go back to the required policies again, starting into that new year.
Thank you. And curriculum hasn't met in December. Their next meeting is January 12th. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that, Grace?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Or Christine, did you want to add to that? No. Okay, we're good. Next item, report of the secretary. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the minutes of the November 19th, 2025 meeting.
Second.
Board discussion? All those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Next item, District Achievement Report. Welcome, Mrs. Hessler, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. That's what we have that.
And board members have a copy of this presentation, yeah, in your packet. I don't think that's,
Oh, I'm sorry. Try again.
There, I got it. Oh, okay. Sorry. You do have a copy of the slide deck that is in your the front of your notebook. You also have the entire report, which is now posted on the district website. For those of you that are new and for the community listening, under the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment webpage, the first tile is the achievement report. It lists this report and the 14 other ones that we've done in the past, so you can go back and look. I also linked this slide deck in, so you have everything that we need. We're going to walk through a few of the sections, and I'm going to briefly do a quick overview on what is included in this report so that community understands what they can go back and dig into. You have the full notebook, and we will take apart the student indicators of the data pieces a little bit deeper, but everything else we're just going to review quickly. So this is an annual report, and there are 5 distinct sections in this report. The first one are your demographics. Then we go into resources, student learning indicators, your fall data sets, and then the BAR annual reports. So the introduction, really quick for those who are new to our communities. We do this annual report usually around this time of year. This was started, I think, 20 years ago by Mr. Howell. I inherited this when I arrived 14 years ago. And what we do is we gather all sorts of information. I start this back in June, collecting information about the RSU and updating all of the things that you're going to find in here. It gives you as a board an opportunity to hear about each of the pieces, have an in-depth written report, and we've even had families who are moving in asking about us, and we can point them to this report, and they really can go through everything about RSU 14. So that is why we do this report. so that we can also talk about all of the different trends that we are seeing in all those different subject areas. So the first section is on demographics, and I will share with you, your community demographics have not been updated since the last time I did see you. So that's kind of like a situation. So I'm at the hold of the towns and the census when those pieces come through there. So there has not been an update, but I check every year. You will also see school demographics. You'll see staff demographics if you're wondering how many teachers we have, how many ed techs we have, how many of our teachers have master's degrees. All of that information is compiled for you to see about your entire staff and also about our student population as of now. The other piece is special education. I know Lisa Garner will come and see you at some point this year. She will go in depth in that, but you have her numbers as of October 1 of the number of special ed students in our district and how they are identified under different disabilities. It's quite fascinating when you see, and there are some amazing pictures of our students engaging in some really cool United athletic activities with students and our staff. And the last part under demographics are your district and your school enrollments. I know we'll be looking at enrollments as you get to budget. We usually do about a 10-year trend so you can see each of the schools and their population either going up or going down. You hear a lot in budget from principals of a bubble class going through or a smaller group going through, so you can kind of get a picture of where we stand as far as starting this fall with the number of students we have in the RSU. The next are the resources. Joe, this is where you begin to geek out a little bit. This gives you a 4-year trend. I do love this part because Stacy really breaks it down into those big chunks of regular instruction, administrative, all of those different components that you will be working through as a board when you're creating this next year's budget. You will see the trends in each of those categories. You'll also see the percentage of what is, again, helping public understand where the funds come from as we split apart our resources. The other piece we put in there is per pupil comparison. That's a demographic we always share with you. Those are our surrounding towns, some on the coast, of how much each district is using to pay for each student. You can see the state average, and you can also see RSU 14's average, who's above us, who's below us. I think when you hear Chris's budget presentation, and this board has been very fiscally responsible, you'll see that we do an awful lot with a budget line that is usually under or right around the state average, which is really nice to see all the things that we offer for our students. The student learning indicators, this is one that we're going to dig into a little bit more today. You do have some tabs if you want to open and go over those. But these are checkpoint data points that we're going to dig into a little bit this evening. The first one is your iReady diagnostic. The second will be your main state assessment. And then we have showing our data points for advanced placement and community college enrollment that students like Maggie at the high school have an opportunity to take. Those are trends that we track so that you can see the number of students that are actually taking full advantage of either AP courses or early enrollment placement in colleges, and they're leaving there with those already under their belts. It is an incredible opportunity for our students. As a mom, I have a daughter who's a senior in college and could have graduated a year early because so many AP classes were accepted. So it truly is an opportunity for students to gain those credits if they'd like, and then have the potential to not pay for those if they choose to go on to post-secondary education. So we're going to dig into these a little bit. So, as a little refresher and a reminder, I know we went really deep into this last year, but for public listening, iReady Diagnostic, a little bit of an overview. It's given 3 times a year in grades K through 8. We don't do kindergarten in the fall. We wait till the spring when we do this. But we do this assessment for reading and mathematics. It does a whole bunch of stuff for our teachers, intervention staff. So first of all, we're looking at the national percentile rank. And we are looking at what does this mean for my kiddo. So number one, it is the primary metric. It's comparing how our students perform compared to a national representation sample students of the same grade at the same time of year. iReady Diagnostic has millions of students taking this across the country, so we can kind of get a gauge of where we are. Excuse me. This fall data is critical for our teaching staff because it helps inform classroom instruction and also classroom interventions. So here's another way to look at it. If you're a parent, you get this report, what does that mean? And I have to thank some board members for really pushing to say, how can we make this a little bit easier for parents to understand when they get this information? So for the past few years, we really said to parents, this is your report and this is telling us your student is ready for grade level, because they color code things. And what does that truly mean? So we wanted to be able to show it in a different way. So I am going to take some time. This is, if those of you that love bell curves, and some of you may, I really want to show you where our kids stand. So if I'm looking at this metric right here, percentile rate can sometimes be funky. Like if you see a percentile rank, you may think, well, if we're at 53%, that's failing. And that's what's hard for people to understand. We're not actually failing. It's actually where we are over the average. So if I love this graph that Christine Burtonay helped us find, but if you look at where the yellow line is, in reading, our kiddos, these are the kids who have scored over the 50th percentile. So we're in the average range where we should be. I think that's a big piece that we have to understand. And these are all of our students put together. These are all of your students who are in special education, gifted and talented, any student getting any type of services. These are all our kids together. So this is where we are right now. This is our fall data mark, and we are where we should be to start the year with our kids. Do we want to grow more? Of course we want to grow more. But I think in this capsulated piece, we're looking at like, these are where our kids should be. This I know as a board and as a parent and as an educator, I turn on the news and I hear the same thing. Maine is ranked 47th in the United States. We're just horrible. We're actually really not. We're doing fine. Our kids are doing great and they're working really hard. This information is used with our teachers especially. They look at their students as a class. They also look at their students in a PLC, so a group of teachers. And then your educators are taking the time to group and regroup kids so that they're getting the correct intervention during their win block. So an intervention may be, I need to be brush up on some skills, and those are clearly outlined, or I need some enrichment on the other end. And your teachers are actually programming for those times for those students to get that experience. The next metric is your math. So we are 52.23% when we put everybody together and we get one big thing. So we are smack dab right in the average range of the bell curve where we should be. So this is another way for you to know what we are doing as we look at our math programming and our reading programming. So again, we will revisit this again in winter. Your students will take it again, and then we will take it again in the springtime. But it's a different way for us to look at it. The other piece that I really wanted to share with you is then we look at performance across the school. So this is where your building administrators take that data and they take a look at it, and then they may have to plan building wide. So for example, if I look at Raymond Elementary School, their percentage, so if you think of the bell curve again, these are where their kids are landing. This is the same thing in math. I know looking at this part right here, I know Michelle Brand here at Jordan Small, her little math group there is a little bit lower than she'd like it to be. They've already put pieces in place and working with students in mathematics. So this is another metric or another way to look at our students now broken down by broken down by school, and then those schools break it down by grade level. So a nice part we did this year, we tried to push out to families, was how do I interpret my own kid? That's great for a school and a district, but what about my own personal child? And so we know you have parent-teacher conferences, and sometimes you don't get to ask every question or you're not really sure. So we wanted to send this out for parents who really wanted to dig in to help them understand. So we sent this little piece. You're going to see two parts of it. But this is explaining to our families what the national norm percentile actually means. It also means how many kids they're compared to, just not in Maine, we're talking across the nation. So for example, if your child's in the 60th percentile, so you're going to get your report, you're going to see that percentile, what does it mean? It means that they scored, as well or better than 60% of the students nationwide. Same thing if they're at the 30 percentile, so you can kind of get a gauge. The other piece I really like that we shared, and it's tiny on the screen, you could look at a percentile range, what it means, and then how families might think about it. So some questions, if your child is below that national average, some questions as a parent I might ask my teacher is, I notice my child's under this average. What could I be doing at home? And what are we doing at school to make sure that my child's getting the instruction that they need? So this is an opportunity to give some families some things to think about when they get their own child's report. I always say as a parent, when you take any assessment, you need to triangulate that data. So how did my child do on that assessment? Does it match what my child's teacher is telling me my child's performance is in the classroom? And is any evidence that I'm getting that my child's attending to school, does that all match together? Because if a test is given on one day, we've all had one bad day. And usually you might hear a teacher say to you, look, I want to retest because child was off that day. But always think about looking at the whole child and the triangulation of that data and not just one single data point. So the next one is your state assessment. So this one gets people's heads spinning a little bit, and I'm going to go over a couple of things. So the main state assessment is also called the main through-year assessment. It is given through the NWEA. That's the platform that is used, and I'm going to walk us through how that works. It's given 2 times a year, once in the fall, once in the spring. It is also nationally achievement norms, and it looks a little bit different. This is actually showing when we look at a child's score, achievement norm, it's comparing them to 13.8 million kids. So that's another big measure that we need to think about. One of the now, we know if you've been on the board, Marge is going to just roll her eyes because I can feel it coming. Once again, they have updated the norms for the scoring. So what means is we really can't compare last year to this year. I did put in your binder in the front. This is how NWEA reports out with their charts. So it's a little bit like, it's a standard scale. It's called a RIT score. And it's a Roche unit, and it's a measurement scale in order to interpret the test. So it really is kind of like measuring in like feet and inches. So everybody is measured the same way, regardless of what grade level you are in. So I think that's really important. Chris, it should be in the front of your book, like behind the pieces. Yes, thank you. Yes, Christina has the correct one. These charts have now been updated. So NWEA, in your book, you do have why NWEA did their updates. One of them was to adjust for demographics across the United States. It also adjusted due to the national pandemic that we had. And so you can read if you are really interested of why they did the renorming. But for example, if I'm looking at the first box and that's my reading, if I have a second grader and they scored a 170 or above, they're right where they should be for their reading. So all of these different pieces, we only do this, sorry, I shouldn't have used that example, in grades 3 through 8 and 10th graders. So the state assessment is 3 through 8 and 10th grade only. And so when we report out to families, that is the report that you're looking at. You're looking at a number. Your kids know their numbers. They are pretty funny. They will tell you like, oh, I got a 222. Like the number will pop, and so they see it. So this is another way for us to look at it, comparing us to national scores as well, which is kind of cool. I'm going to go back to here. So here is our achievement for fall NWEA for reading. If I'm looking at this chart, you'll see the grade level, the average RIT score, so that standard feet inches score, and then the national average. So you can see that our students in 3rd grade are higher than the national average. We score in at a 191, the national average is a 185. So in reading, all of our grade levels are at or above the national average, except for the high school, which is below by 1 point. So if you're thinking, how are we doing? We are above the national average in the NWEA for our fall testing. If I look at math, all of our students, every grade level, is at or above the national average. And then remember, the national average encompasses 13.8 million students, which is pretty good. So we were pretty happy with those results. Again, that's another data point that not only your teachers look at, your PLC group grade levels look at, and your administrators look at, and then they decide what is our next step based on this data. So in the fall, they have their iReady for most of grade levels and their NWEA that they're looking at and planning. So that's where we look at those pieces. So key components. Now, remember we talked about there's a fall test and a spring test. Marge, I know you're going to just cringe. But anyway, the spring test we took last spring, we reported home to you their RIT score because we had that. The DOE takes those scores, and over the summer, they come up with a way, and then they calculate a proficiency score for the state of Maine. So to be proficient in the state of Maine, you need to have a score of 1,500. And they convert it and analyze it, and then we have those for all of our grade levels. So that's another piece that they do for their own accountability purposes. So they take what our kids do in the NWEA, they come up with a scaled score, they analyze it, and then they pop those out. So you have two really colorful charts in your book that anyone can also access online. It will show you the grade level. For example, on my screen, I have third graders, and it says how many third graders we have. And then it says how many third graders in the whole state took it, and you can see how we scored versus the state of Maine. You'll also see the breakdown between above the state average, at state expectations, below, or well below. So you can go through each of those pieces. So it's another way that the state does their accountability measures. They take the test and they put it into a formula, and then they spit them back out to us in the fall. And we usually get it just before school opens. So, and Christina, thank goodness, found that when the state gave us an average for fourth grade, that it added up to 107%. And I called, and they had refixed it, and I was able to put it in your book before. So thank you, Christina, for finding that. But that's another way that the state will look at us as a RSU. They do these for all of the schools. So I also need to point out that our fall assessment is different than our spring assessment because of this accountability measure. Students who take the fall test, when you take NWEA, every time you answer a question, if you answer it right, it's going to bump you up a level. If you answer it wrong, it's going to put you down a level. And it does this for the whole way to get a really good baseline of where you are. It could go up 2 levels, 3 levels, depending. In the springtime, it only stays in one band and can go only up 1 or down 1 only because it's doing your grade level. So sometimes, and this is what I want parents to know, is if you see a score, a RIT score in the spring that's a little lower than the fall, it's okay because your child didn't get a chance to go any higher because of this accountability measure. And we'll be messaging that out to families when we send those spring reports home as well. But I wanted you as a board to kind of have that understanding when we look at all these different numbers. And yes, we have to take them and put them all kinds of different ways to help us make sense of what they are. So your fall data sets, this is what you have, and you'll notice that 1/2 is blank because I am going to put in there the spring and update it for you once we have them. So this is an example of Wyndham Middle School. It shows you it breaks it down by school. Each of your schools now has been broken down to show between the average in RSU 14 at that school for that grade and the national average at that same grade level and that same subject. So you can see that we have Wyndham Middle School in both reading and mathematics this fall is above the national average for both reading and mathematics. You'll see I'm going to keep the same exact scale and have that for you ready, that once we have our spring scores, I can at least populate that for you, and you'll have it by the end of, in June, you'll have that information. So you have a page for each of the schools all the way through. Yes, Jordan Small is on 2 pages because they have 4 grade levels, and I couldn't make it fit, so they get an extra page today. The last part of your booklet goes over the BAR annual reports. So if you were at our last curriculum committee meeting, we had an in-depth presentation of all things bar from those 3 schools, Wyndham Primary, Jordan Small, and Wyndham High School. Each of the schools is at a different implementation level. It was fascinating to hear what was done. The bar program provides an extensive report regarding the school, and you have those in your notebook. Sorry, I have a cold. You have them in the notebook, and they're also accessible for anybody who wants to look at that online. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Joe?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In all sincerity, and sorry I've pressed so hard on this, but I think the way that this is presented now tells the story that I intrinsically knew was there, that our teachers in our schools are doing an absolutely outstanding job trying to make sure that kids are getting a great education, and they get a great education here. And unfortunately, I think some of the narrative over the last few years, at no fault of anybody here, got lost in some individual data points that didn't really tell the whole story. So it doesn't mean there's not room to grow. Of course, there's room to grow. But looking at the NWA results, with just one exception being below average, I think that's amazing. The iReady results being above the 50th percentile in every single category, I think is amazing. I think two things I'd recommend additionally, just to continue to keep this going. First, if it's possible, when the iReady results come out through Parent Square, I think having what amount to be page 19 and 20 in the achievement report, but those 2 pages that talk about how to read the results, being attached to that circulation, I think would draw parents' attention to it, because despite it being communicated out, I'm still finding in some conversations with parents they don't know about it yet, and they missed the posting or whatever. So if that can be appended to that, I think that would be another bonus. The other thing that I've heard a lot this year is just still continued confusion around this below grade level, at grade level, et cetera. So I do think, and for those listening, that understanding, that aha moment that a lot of people have, including myself, that we understand kids aren't going to be on grade level when they start at that grade. The goal is to get them there, and I think reiterating that message is wonderful. Other things I want to call out. Sorry, I'll get to a question probably. I looked at the AP results, and year over year, that stuck out to me as a real shining piece of this report. I don't know what they're doing in English at the high school, but in particular, those numbers really stuck out to me. Just absolutely outstanding. The other piece, the Wyndham Primary bar results, that program is an amazing investment. That has proven, I know we've seen it at the high school, but now seeing the elementary results, it continues to prove well worth participating in that, in my opinion. One question, here, I'll give you a question. On the state forms, the colorful ones, they use the header above expectations, at expectations, etc. Is what they really mean above average, at average, or does that expectations word mean something else?
That is the state of Maine's verbiage. And so the best I can answer that, Joe, is they have to take our numbers, and it is an accountability piece. This is how we get all our federal funding, pieces like that. So they have to put everything into a certain format, and that's what they came up with. So I can do some digging and find out more, but everybody who's asked is getting a runaround. Like, they're like, well, these are the things we have to have. Breaking it down right now, what I really did was I mirrored what we are given when we go into the platform.
Mm-hmm.
Got it in front of me. To see how our students do. So they basically, if you score a 1500, you're at the state expectation. So anything over 1500 is going to be above. So that's how they're breaking it down for that piece. But they came up, excuse me, with the 4-digit score, and there still is very much confusion on what does that score truly mean? Why was it set there?
Gotcha. I think it's just another example, and this is not an RSU 14 issue, it's a state issue of words really mattering.
Yeah.
Because you can interpret this and you can say, I'm just picking one line out, 40% of our students are below the state expectation. That's I don't think the right message.
Right.
So anyway.
I think
what
one
it's
of the,
worth.
if I can just jump in here for a second, I think one of the hard parts that's been over all the years, and so first of all, NWEA is our state accountability under No Child Left Behind. We're required to, as a state, to do that. And what's hard about state assessments is that Maine sets its cut scores separately from New Hampshire, from Massachusetts, from everybody else, and each state is required to have their own accountability assessment. So Maine chose a few years ago to go with NWEA. It's up for review again this year. They may choose to continue with NWA. They may choose to go with a different testing system. I think what's hard here is that the attempt is to then take state level standards, which are Common Core standards for math and reading, and to try to make an interpretation of a student who's meeting would then be able to say, yes, they can demonstrate all of those individual state standards at that particular grade level. For the exceeding, the psychometricians that are working behind the scenes in order to figure out what that cut score, because the cut score for this year may be separate from the cut score for next year, depending upon who takes the assessment, what the actual span of all the different results might be. So I think what we'd want to look at as a district, and I know I've shared with the board before, is that first of all, are we scoring at state average or better? So where are we falling within that? And then also, where are our students falling, and are we trending upward or are we trending downward as we look to do students moving along? The other thing that's interesting in this district, you'd think that we'd be large enough, but there are cohorts of students that have very different needs. So one group of 250 students may be different than another group of 250 students. You'd think with a large enough group in our sample size. But not always the case.
Thanks for that. Just in closing again, really appreciate the work on this. I think this is great. I hope that our teachers get these messages. I know they do, that there's a lot to celebrate here. Of course, there's opportunity, but a lot to celebrate. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I also wanted to bring out, Jody mentioned Mr. Bloom's outdoor ed class, and the programming that teachers are doing and thinking differently to engage our kids is amazing. My afternoon was spent with teachers from Manchester, Jordan Small, and Wyndham Middle talking about and starting to design, like, what do projects or outdoor learning or things going to look like at our new building? What are we already doing? What do we want to bring forward? And just the passion behind it and the engagement of what they're planning and trying to do, and wanting to weave in standards that we know students need to be really tight on, so that they can go to the high school like Maggie and have all these opportunities ahead of them to do those pieces. And Jody, I have to say, the outdoor ed thing is, my youngest daughter was in outdoor ed education for 2 years at her middle school. 7 of that group of kids are now sophomores in college in outdoor, and they are majoring in environmental science or environmental science policy. Like, that made a profound impact, because every day, no matter what the weather was, they were outside first block. And I will never forget those 2 years of all of the stuff and all the cooking stuff they did, but it truly made a big effect. And our teachers are wanting to do that work with our students in these communities and finding community partners to do that. And you don't find that everywhere. I look at the high school and students like Maggie and other students that they have incredible opportunities of courses to take. They have incredible opportunities to get college credits if they want that. And Marge talks about the vocational program, where kids are coming out with licenses that they don't have to pay for and can do whatever. So as much as, I have to come and talk about data, there's so many other things that we do here. And I just appreciate the time to be able to talk about the numbers. But also, Joe, thank you, and Christina, for feedback of how do we make this better and understandable for our families in our community. And I appreciate that, and we'll continue to do that, and and definitely we'll share with teachers, like, yeah, great job, let's keep going, and we have a lot that we still want to do here. So,
Jody?
Don't want to get back too much in the weeds, but I wanted to just bring up, just straight up from the MAP score. So one of the things that did go out was this MAP score, and to me that was just new when it came out with the report, just seeing it just from a parent perspective. One of the things that I noticed was that there was a lot of growth in one area for one of my kiddos, and then basically zero in another area. it was good to get that before the conferences because we were able to have a short conversation about it. There wasn't enough time to address it, but it certainly provided an action item for us to follow up on in terms of the type of intervention. So I appreciated that. The question that I have is related, and I don't know if a lot of families understand what that MAP score is, but I'm on board with the whole conversation of we continue to educate people who want to be educated, then it can become a little clearer. One thing that I have two questions. One of them is this student achievement norms chart that you've included. We've talked in the past about averages including GT students and then students that are potentially in that 25th percentile and under taking Title I on the lower score side of things. This is truly a mean, correct? This
Correct.
is not.
This is everyone together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in this case, we have interventionists, we have Title I, and we
Yep.
have iReady assessments and then directed math or reading that would specifically target kiddos that are under these mean
Yep.
values.
And we meet tomorrow morning, again, your standards-based teachers and your interventionists at all the levels. Take that data, call that out. Lisa Garno pulls her special education students. We look at their programming. We also pull students that need that assistance.
Okay, and so I think that's worth just mentioning for anyone who is sort of looking at, well, my score was under the mean. What does that mean for my kiddo? No one's called me, no one has talked to me about it. Maybe another way for identification, for intervention. The other comment I had was, and I've spoken with Lisa Garneau about this, outside of the special education pocket, we'll say, for a kiddo that's significantly behind, one of the things that continues to be a little difficult, I think, for families is understanding that if they're taking iReady assessments, that data is being used. I think people really understand that pretty well once they get in a couple of years into school. The NWEA, I think they kind of understand it, and I was going to say exactly what Joe said with respect to if 40% of kiddos in grade 3 are not, they're under the state expectation, then how can we have a mean of 191 and have above national average? That is confusing. But you've answered that. What I'm trying to say is that we get a report card, and then we get some habits of work, and then we get MAP growth, and we get iReady, and we get NWEA, and often those are conflicting. And so if we continue to educate, I think it's okay for people who are engaged and want to understand the data. I'll give the example of a student. One of my kiddos is 2 years behind and is provided data testing at the grade level that he's enrolled in versus what he's taking intervention in. And I do think there's a big opportunity for us to improve there with respect to how we work with families who have students who are taking intervention at the grade level appropriately for where they're at. But their data that they're testing out on and what's being presented is at the grade level that they're enrolled in. Does that make sense?
Yes, and also and a great follow-up that we worked on last year is this very soon, as elementary report cards are going home, if your child is in Title I, you're going to get a learning report of what they're working on for the intervention. It doesn't matter what grade level you're in. If you are working on phonemic awareness, blending, and segmenting, you're going to get a report on how your child is progressing in those skills. So along with a note and also some comments from the interventionist that's working with them. So this is another way that we're saying to you as a parent, here's your report card, here's your iReady, here's your NWA, but also here's the intervention report. So you know that the child is progressing in what they're actually working on.
Yeah, and I mention it only to say that NWEA is going to provide a test for a student that's sitting in a grade 4 classroom, but their intervention and their targeted learning from their teacher and their interventionist is on grade and is appropriate. And I do think that makes up for some of the gap there sometimes, because it's not GT and it's not an average. We're getting a mean here, but it's the students. And I don't know if families really understand that. So if someone was listening to this, I just want to point that out, is that it is student to student and that some of this testing can't possibly. So when I go into my interviews, I have to ask, is this the test on grade or is this the test for where my student is
and I
at?
think you're spot on, Jody, and also triangulate that data. I can't say that enough. You know your child, you know your child's teacher. Is what the teacher's seeing clicking with what you are seeing as test results? And here's the other thing that we dove into a lot last year. If something is amiss, like an NWA or something, ask how long your child spent on that assessment. We know at the high school, like all of those friends, stop laughing at me, Maggie. I went through and I'm like, wow, 82 kids took it within 30 minutes. There were 47 reading questions that included paragraphs. So I think we just have to, whatever we're faced with, we have to look, analyze, think deeply. And yes, we have to report out. We want to be completely transparent. But there are some other factors. But when it comes to your own home and your own children, that's what you need to be doing. Like, you know your child best. You know how your child's attending to school. So.
I have a comment and I have a question. Comment is I watched Derek Pierce's videos that he did on Everybody Loves, Maine Loves Our Public Schools, and they're all really the outdoor. And he was the Casco Bay principal for years, but he started in Poland. And I was amazed. And there were most of them were small schools up in the county.
Yeah.
It was just, so, I mean, this outdoor thing is really moving ahead, and I'm glad we're doing it too. And the other thing is, I just have a question about students receiving special education services. RES, is that number on 10-1-25, does that include pre-K? It's 55.
That includes pre-K.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's why that number is,
Yep,
okay.
that's why, because we have all our little pre-K friends all over the place.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for this.
You're welcome.
I'm blown away. It's wonderful. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Joe.
I was actually on the same page as Sue when she brought that up. And just a follow-up question, I noticed WPS is a particular outlier, and this might be a follow-up for later, but almost a 50% increase in students receiving special education services from 10-1-22.
yeah.
Do we have an idea what might be driving that?
We've added 16 pre-K kids. I don't feel qualified to answer that. Maybe Chris does.
I'll go ahead and I'll give a quick answer, and then I'll get a follow-up. But the same process is being used for working with students and determining whether or not a student needs an IEP or not, and whether or not through intervention and other supports that is the final outcome. So that process has stayed pretty much the same. I think what it shows is that the profile of students and the number of students coming out of CDS one component of it is students coming out of CDS that did not have their needs met. And so however they were identified through that process, and then that continues on, and they have an IEP as they come in as kindergartners. But we have seen students with higher needs enrolling in our schools, and I think the board understands that through the budget process that we've had to increase special education services over the last couple of years, but a lot of it is just profile.
Thanks for that. And what I was actually hoping is that we're just catching more students than before and giving those services versus a growth in needs. But it sounds like it's both. And to your point, as we think about budget, I mean, that's an extreme increase, even 24 to 25 alone, never mind 22 to 25. And it just strikes me as a major outlier in the district. So very interesting. Sorry for one more comment or thought, but it hit me as I was sitting here. I think you mentioned this achievement report gets posted online, of course, and people can go find it. I at least myself, think this is valuable enough to put out a link in Parent Square to say, we've done this and you should look at it. I hope people spend time looking at this. Thanks.
Happy to send out a square message. We sent out the snow day tracker, so everybody knows they can track their snow days now.
Further questions for Christine Hessler?
I was just going to make a comment. Which version would we send out? Because we have different versions. We've got the chart. We have this is different than the one that was in the packet.
So on the website, the PDF, your entire notebook is on one PDF linked on the website. I can send that out to families. This is just the slide deck. It doesn't go into detail.
That's no problem. I just missing the bell curve on the PDF, so maybe I just.
Oh, we don't have the bell curve in there. We just made that yesterday, but
Okay.
we can add that on there if put that piece.
I think what might be helpful is just to put out a link to the page itself, so that if anyone's interested in looking through all the past years and how the graphics have gotten better over time.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Right, our next agenda item is strategic plan update. And everybody should have the slide deck for that too.
Such a strange room to present in, where you feel like, especially tonight, the board is so far away. Tonight, we want to give an opportunity to provide an overview of the strategic plan, and what we're looking at specifically and starting with is the 2021 strategic plan, and which, with the board approved, I think, in August of 2021. It was actually the same night the board had a discussion on masking and whether or not we were returning to school with masks. It was an interesting night. So the strategic plan at that time kind of fell to the back, but it hasn't fallen to the back of RSU 14 because this has been our guiding document for professional development work that we've done. It's been the guiding document for our budget, making sure that we are meeting the needs of students as what's defined in the plan. RSU 14 has a long history of creating strategic plans. I know the first one I had the chance to participate in was in 2000 with Sue Gendron when she was superintendent. And then over time, it's been interesting how the plan has served different purposes. So 2000, Sandy did his first one in 2005. In 2010, we did a strategic plan with Raymond, and it was really that plan helped guide instruction and how the two districts were coming together as Wyndham and Raymond then consolidated. And then we've had different iterations of the plan over time, now going into 2026. And then on Friday of this week, and Christine and I will have a chance to talk about this at the end, but on Friday this week, we're going to be kicking off our next strategic plan, which will take us through 2031, which is absolutely amazing to think that that's the point that we've reached. So community voices, one thing that's important on a strategic plan is that Christine and I can sit in a room with Lisa and we can develop a strategic plan. And that's just based upon our ideas. And we can go to the board and say, board, what do you think should be in our strategic plan? The purpose of a really good, high-quality strategic plan is not only to get school people involved, but also get our community involved. And the prompt that was used back on March 5th, 2020, that date's important because on March 13th, the world shut down for the state of Maine. But March 5th, 2020, we held a visioning, and at that time, it was, what should a graduate of Wyndham High School look like? And we had a whole cross-section of the community, about 60 people came and had a discussion. We drew pictures, what should the portrait of a graduate be? And it's actually Christine's captured those pictures that are there, and there's a list of all the individuals. For this next strategic plan moving forward, we're going to be looking to expand out the community voices because we want people to be involved in helping to shape the future, helping to shape our strategic direction as a district, where we're going to be moving forward. You know, some districts will do 2-year strategic plans. I know of some districts that will do 1-year strategic plans. So every year they'll have everybody come in, do a community conversation. Basically, people vote with their feet. Where do you think the district should go in a direction? And then so each year they're kind of hopscotching around about where the plan is. We've settled on a 5-year, which is a good chance to take a look at where we are progressing as a district. But under our strategic plan, working with the community, that we're committed to establishing a safe, supportive, inclusive environment, developing strong partnerships. And this was a key piece that came out of this plan. And thinking back, think about the work that's been done in the last 5 years with Capstone, with community partnerships through extended learning opportunities, all the work that Lorraine has done, all the work that buildings have done to get out in the community, get connected with the community. All those partnerships and all that work actually came out of this plan. And then fostering learner aspirations to engagement and authentic and diverse learning experiences. So all of those pieces coming together. And I think Christine's going to talk about the different segments of the plan. Did you freeze? There you go. The core beliefs.
There we go. We've gone over these each year, so I'm going to just briefly touch on them. Core belief 1 is our designing learning environments in schools with equity and inclusion in mind. Thinking about that ethical responsibility we have to every single student who walks through the school and every family, that they're a part of this community. Looking at whole child, thinking about all the quadrants of one's development, and really being mindful that we design places that are healthy. As Sue Accardi was talking about the podcast where Chris speaks about the green design, a lot of that was also, and Glenn Cummings was talking about healthy conditions that really support deep, lasting learning. And there's a lot that we can say about sort of the environmental conditions of a school or the social conditions of a school that students feel cared about by their peers and their staff. So really, whole child efforts has been a focus. And my computer's being strange. Student engagement. You've highlighted different examples. People have talked about outdoor learning tonight, outdoor education. That's certainly a state conversation, but there's other states we can look at for some of their work in those authentic, real world and getting out in the community and digging in the dirt, so to speak, applying the math and science to farming or applying it in other ways. So that's a way to really hook kids in. Staff engagement, if they're not engaged, if they don't feel cared about and they don't have professional learning time together, if students don't see staff collaborating, being kind and professional and excited about the learning, they sense that. And so we need to build in opportunities for staff to feel engaged, cared about, supported in their work and their professional growth. Community engagement is next, if I can get this to go. And we know that the community needs to feel connected to schools. I think a lot of the conversation around the annual achievement report tonight about how do we do a better job of communicating with families about academic achievement, that's critical. If they feel a disconnect from the report that gets sent home, that's not a good way to sort of make them feel a part of their child's learning and educational journey. So how do we involve the community more, and not just those with children in the schools, but all sorts of community members, business owners. How do we get all stakeholders to the table? And the last part of our plan is around transferable skills. So that's why it's so critical that kids are engaged in that critical thinking, real world, authentic learning, because we need them to take the learning in the math class or the English class, reading or writing, and apply to real world situations so that they can be thinking about, well, how do I bring this out at the age, at a middle school age, high school, or post-secondary? How do I apply my learning out in the world? And how do I see the adults around me doing that same transfer of knowledge and skills? So those have been really the guiding 6 principles that we have done a lot of work around. Hang on. And so I want to get to this document. You've seen it before, for those of you who've been on the board. If you haven't, this lives on our strategic plan website, and this is where we have, Chris and I and Christine and others, have been engaging administrators for the last 5 years in periodic, every year, multiple times, checking in on this spreadsheet. And so I'm going to click on that, if anything works here. And you're not going to be able to see it all, but what they do is each core belief, there's a tab for each of the 6, and again, it's all accessible. They go in and they say whether that particular action step to get to that overarching goal has been achieved. Is it in progress? Is it completed? Ooh, this core belief 2, you see a lot here that's complete. The school has steps that have been taken, and they have practices in place that speak to that specific action step. So we built sort of the overarching core beliefs, and then we have strategic goals, and then we lasered down into really specific, measurable steps we could take at the school level or district level to make progress. And so every single core belief has an update, and we asked the principals to go in and just make sure that each action step was accurately reflected. You'll see there's a lot that's still in progress. Many of these beliefs and this work will continue into the next strategic plan. I would imagine that we'll get similar input. There'll be new ideas, and we'll have new action steps, but we'll continue to monitor in this way. So things that are in progress now could very well continue. Some things are not applicable to a specific school. It's more of a district level action step, if you will, but you can look for those progress updates all the way through. And so that segues into our district goals for this year. I'll turn it over to Chris.
And I'll just go through these quickly. We had a chance to share these with the board, I think, earlier this fall as the administrative team met in June, and then also followed up in August and looking at what are the goals that we want to set this year and how do they match up with what's happening within the strategic plan. So first of all, goal 1 under the instructional framework. By June 2026, all schools and programs in RSU 14 will demonstrate measurable implementation of the district's instructional framework. We've shared portions of the instructional framework before. Really what the instructional framework is about is what are those high-yield, research-driven practices that impact student achievement. And looking at, for those different pieces, what is the effect size? So something that you can do in your classroom that's going to have a huge effect on student learning, looking at ways that we can implement. And then following along with that, our administrators have been working, and as an administrative team, we've created our own feedback tool so that administrators can go in, other teacher leaders can go in, just do a quick scan, look at what's happening within classrooms, and then looking at how well are we implementing some of those practices. Goal 2, looking at staff engagement. June 2026, each school program in the RSU 14 will implement at least 3 specific measurable staff engagement initiatives tailored to their unique needs. So working with our staff to make sure that the professional development that we offer is relevant to them, that they can actually see the connections. I mean, one of the pieces that I think we've also really talked about is that as a professional, I know the things that I need to work on, and so what opportunities are we providing for staff to be able to do some of that self-directed learning? How are we creating, getting input, but then also how are we getting feedback from staff on the different initiatives or on the different professional development opportunities that we offer? And then lastly, under student engagement, which directly impacts achievement, June 2026, RSU 14 will reduce chronic absenteeism across all schools from the baseline 6.5% to a target of 6.2%. So lowering down the number of students that are chronically absent. And if I remember correctly, that's 18 absences put you into that chronically absent threshold. So looking to go ahead and reduce. And one thing that we've already seen this year through first quarter is attendance is up. BARS had an impact on that at the high school. We're looking at other grade levels to see whether or not, but what we're seeing or hearing from our principals is that, you know, attendance is better than where it has been in past years. So hopefully as we continue to move past poor attendance habits that were developed over time, working with families, and I know each of our buildings of making it a point of contact with parents, the importance of being in school every day, and being able to make those connections. So, wrapping all of this together, tonight just wanted to share that we're getting ready to kick off the information gathering portion of our strategic plan. So this Friday, via Parent Square, we'll be putting out an announcement, and we'll be providing an opportunity for the community to participate in their first thought exchange. And thought exchange, we shared this with the board in the board workshop. It's an opportunity for me individually to answer a prompt, and the prompt will be about what does the community see that a student in RSU 14 needs to be successful moving into the future. I get a chance to go on, I get a chance to share what my ideas are about that. Community members will have an opportunity to go in and share what they think. They'll also have an opportunity to go in and see what other people think and have a chance to go ahead and rate that. So we're going to start, first of all, this Friday with the greater school community, which will be our staff, will be our parents. Starting next week, we have an article that will be in the December 12th Eagle, which will be an opportunity for the complete communities of Windham and Raymond. And we're going to leave this open for a few weeks and allow the community to have a conversation about what is it that they see a student needs to have for knowledge and skills to be successful moving into the future. We will then couple this in the late winter, early spring with student focus groups, with staff focus groups. And one thing that has actually been helpful over time is that as our strategic plans have really become more narrowly focused. I can remember one strategic plan where we had one goal and nobody could define what it was. It was called revolutionary learning, and nobody knew what revolutionary learning was, and people tried to kind of create their own definition. As our plans have become more mature and as the action steps have become more concrete, it's actually been easier to then chart that progress. So we'll also give the community a chance to look at past strategic plans, to look at this current plan. Are there elements that we want to continue with, or do we want to look forward? And then we will then develop a smaller writing group. And we'll just start pulling documents together, and we'll give the opportunity for community to have some feedback on themes that are established and then individual action steps. And then it would be our goal to bring this to the board in August of 2026 and have a presentation, have the board have a chance to provide some feedback so that starting in the school year, the 27 school year, which is 26-27, that we'll have the opportunity to start our next strategic plan. I'm going to guess that some of the key themes that have come out in the 2021 to 2026 plan will reappear again, but maybe some new ideas may come out of it, and look forward to that community conversation. We've never done a conversation this big, so it'll be interesting to see how many people choose to participate. And we know the holidays, people are busy, but we'll be able to leave it open for enough time. And the last time we did a plan, we started in March, and we were able to move some things forward. So looking forward to launching this on Friday and having a chance for the community to weigh in. And Christine, I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to add? Okay. I don't know if there's questions.
Grace?
Go ahead, Grace.
Just to be clear, for the community at large, when you're putting the article in the Windham Eagle, there's going to be a link there for people that can go to.
They will have a QR code.
A QR code,
that
okay.
they can scan, or for those who don't know how to use a QR code, will actually be a specific link.
Okay, and it'll be
that
this, be the same, they can add their comments as well as see others' comments?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, and they can go in and rate, and I can't remember how many stars that you give an individual comment, and it allows for those conversations to take place, and it allows us to then, through some great tools on the back end, have some help from AI to be able to then run through and say what are some of the common themes that come through all this process.
I'm certainly excited about getting started on the next strategic plan, but we still have 6 months left of the current one. So just flipping through that, the spreadsheet, you don't have to bring it back up. I'm just thinking about some of the things that haven't quite been finished yet. So is there going to be an opportunity for kind of a wraparound discussion amongst the A team of what maybe didn't we get to? Why didn't we get there? Like, is there going to be a reflection bit of how did this all go? Where did we miss the mark? You know, that.
Almost a closing ceremony?
Yes.
For the strategic plan?
Yes.
Yes. We'll have a chance, and most likely will be our June administrative retreat, where we have a chance to reflect on the year. We'll also reflect on the strategic plan. I would guess that most of the writing for the next plan is going to happen in late June and July, and where we have a chance to kind of, we'll have common themes by then. I think we'll have a baseline of indicators and things that we want to do for action steps. But as far as that final piece of closing out the last plan, most likely will be the June retreat, August retreat, because in August we'll be then bringing the new plan to the board, and we'll be looking at that also for some goal setting as well.
Okay, I just think it would be important if, during that discussion, if there was budgetary pieces, resourcing policy pieces that was kind of a holdup, I think that'd be important feedback to get to the board as we move into the new one that, hey, maybe this impacted why we couldn't get, X, Y, Z done. So just I would like to hear if there's any board related bits that come from that conversation.
Yeah, I think personally, I'll just, reflecting on what came out of the strategic plan, I think what I'm most proud of as far as the district goes is what happened in the work that buildings have done, really focusing in on how do we engage students and then also how do we engage with the community. There's been some great milestones and steps that have been done with that. Some of the work that's been done through Focus Area 1 under Equity Inclusion, we've started some great work. Some of that is stalled. I think that's an area that we want to reflect on, and how do we actually make sure that every student who is in RSU 14 feels heard and valued and feels connected to the overall community in which they're going to school. And so some of that work, I'm hopeful, will continue forward.
Jody?
Can I ask if we are using some of our consultants around developing curriculum and the team, our local experts and our staff for the new middle school? We have different spaces in terms of what we could do with students versus what we couldn't do before. So the vision of what a student might look like, maybe this is not relevant, but just thinking about what access we would have in the building in terms of the types of options that students may have. And we had a few testimonials just around outdoor education today, but is that something that could be discussed?
I think it's very relevant, and it's actually part of the discussions that the middle school planning team is having. I think we have our next meeting tomorrow, right? That team has been planning on what are some of those curriculum pieces that the new building's going to go ahead and afford. And just as an aside, that committee, which has done a lot of great work, has been really kind of looking at three functions. One, how do we bring the two schools together? Two, how do we close down both schools? And then three, what are the things that we can plan forward in the new building that are opportunities of things that we don't have? So I think it would be a good opportunity for that group, and we can remind them tomorrow that when they have an opportunity to participate in that they include those elements. And then also it could be one of the action steps that appear if student engagement appears again, or some of that community outreach. Who knows, maybe a farm to school component may appear in there. Christine's will give me the look.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's in March that we hope to present. We've talked about the farm to school action plan and outdoor education action plan that was developed. So this work's been happening the last couple of years. So we're ready to bring that forward to you in terms of the infrastructure and the campus of the new middle school and all the potential learning there and all the ways that you can integrate any content area into that outdoor educational program. So we'll do a deeper dive in the spring.
Any other questions on this before we move on? All right.
So look for your Parent Square announcement on Friday, and I hope you participate in the thought exchange.
All right, we can move on while they're getting back up on the stage. Next item, new appointment. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the following appointment for the 2025-2026 school year. Amy Smith, psychologist for Wyndham High School and Wyndham Middle School.
Second.
Board discussion? All those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Next item, public gift/donation to the school. May I have a motion, please?
I move to accept a donation to the RSU 14 backpack program in the amount of $25,000 from Suresh Gali.
Second.
Public comment? Board discussion?
A little bit of background here. We were approached, as everybody knows, I'm on the backpack program. We were approached by the Wyndham Economic Development Director because he had heard from the in Suresh Gali, that is a foundation. I guess they do a lot of work in Portland and across nationwide. and I think they're overseas also. And they wanted to invest in Wyndham. They have some buildings that they are presently coming before us, or the town, for, but they were really interested. They had heard about the backpack program and what it did, and they needed more information. So our chef, not our nutritionist, our chef, Ryan Roderick, he put a whole background together for this foundation, so they basically could see how we started, how it works, the benefit of it, and how it helps the students out. And they were very impressed with it, and they came back with this is what they came back with, that they would like to donate $25,000 to the backpack program, and we are more than happy to accept their donation. It's very, and people don't understand, right now, since things have been going on within the government, when we started school, I think we were down. Things were looking better. We were down to like 99 students a week that got them. Right now we're up to 125. So the number is climbing. I'm not going to give any statistics for the food pantries because everybody knows how it's going there. So with the price of food also going up, this is great. This is a great donation for us. So we're grateful when anybody wants to donate to the program. Thank you.
Ginny? Sorry, I thought I saw your hand up.
You did, yeah. So you did give some good background on it. I'm just wondering if there's, I like to research groups like this, I guess, so I'd like to know more about them before I accepted anything from them. I'm a very suspicious person. So I think this is lovely. Where did they come up with the amount of $25,000?
That is what they came forward with us for after they basically stated that they wanted to do something good in Wyndham, in the community. And I do not know these people. I've had no contact with them. We have gone to the Wyndham Economic Development Director for all of this. This is I guess it's a very wealthy foundation, for lack of a better word. And I know they have invested a lot in Portland. I don't know. I had heard of there's quite a few places they've done in there. They've done a lot of buildings. And I don't have any more information on them. When it comes to what I do, I don't look a gift horse in the mouth. I guess that's about the best I can say. So I don't research it into the fact of where they got their money. They seem above board. They've gone through the town to reach us. So I would tend to not think that they were doing things that would not be appropriate in the world as we would like to know it. And that's all. I'm sorry, I can't give you any more information than that.
Grace?
So I just wanted to point out there was also a great article about the backpack program in a recent Wyndham Eagle. I forget which week it was. And just thank you, Marge, for all that you do for that program as really the backbone of it, as I see it, plus all the volunteers that come and help you each and every week. Truly amazing, especially a week like this week with the snow day yesterday and all that must have entailed. But I also just wanted to ask if it's appropriate somehow to then thank this foundation and how that would work, if there could be some way to be sure that we're thanking them for this donation, assuming that we are indeed accepting it, which I'm sort of assuming we will.
If we do, Mr. Howell, would you like to explain the conversation we had earlier?
Sure. So there's actually there's a process and policy where as a board, if you do choose to accept a gift, that first of all you include a letter of thanks, which I'm guessing that you'll designate to the superintendent to write that letter of thanks for that. But in addition, if you want to do, we have had times in the past where things have been given where the board's invited an individual and just thanked them publicly for that. Thinking about a family that donated the Pegasus climbing structure across the street. I think we also had Jersey Mike's gave $10,000 to, I think it was Manchester School, when they first moved into town as a business, that's their part of their practice. I just also want to respond, Ginny, whenever I see a gift, I always do a deep dive as well. What I saw was a person who's a developer, owns hotels, does developments, and has a foundation in which they do give philanthropic gifts to programs. And I didn't see anything that my initial research that would show anything. The other piece that I'd also add is that if someone were to give a gift to the RSU, we're separate from the town. We're not a town entity. We are our own separate organization. So whatever someone has for dealing with the town of Wyndham or the town of Raymond is separate from RSU 14.
Further, Jody?
I just had one comment. This may just be clerical, but RSU 14 is a fiduciary agent for this program, correct? It's not a school-sponsored program, or can you catch me up on the particulars of maybe someone asking a question why RSU 14 has to receive the money for a program that's outside of the board's purview?
It is a program in which we hold the funds. It's
Yeah.
also a program in which our staff does the purchasing through the nutrition department. So we have quite a bit of involvement with this particular program. And I would invite, I've had a chance to go and pack on a couple occasions, and what's also kind of fun about it is that many of the people that come and pack are retired Wyndham and Raymond educators who participate in this program. But we do hold the funds in our chart of accounts. They're held outside the budget.
Which was the bigger point of what I was trying to drive to, is that it's outside of our regular budget, that no one would be looking for this as a line item for what we would allocate or otherwise going into the budget season.
No, and we've had other businesses within the Wyndham and Raymond community that have been donating to the backpack program for years because they have, as a organization, they want to designate to this particular program. And the reason why it's coming to you tonight is that the board in policy has a $5,000 threshold for which anything under $5,000, I can accept that gift. If it comes over $5,000, that's up to the board to accept.
Yeah. I just wanted to answer that, then we can get to you. You might see things in the paper or somewhere, basically, that we receive, some funds are received, that somebody has a fundraiser for us, et cetera, so forth. And the reason that has not, because that's what came up, that was my discussion with Chris before, is it has not come to us because it comes in as separate checks. So it doesn't exceed that $5,000. So, if a place has this function and a big fundraiser and we get this big donation, it comes in as different checks from all the people that entered it. So therefore, it doesn't have to come to the board because it doesn't exceed that $5,000 individually.
Yeah, no apologies needed. First and foremost, an incredible program. Marge requests to you or to pass on that I'd love to know when the packing days are. If it's something that maybe could be added to our board spreadsheet, if I could make myself available, that would be great.
Every Tuesday morning at 8:30, except it wasn't yesterday so that's where I was this morning.
Very
At
good.
Wyndham Middle School,
At
correct?
Wyndham Middle School
Okay.
cafeteria.
Even still, if somebody doesn't mind, just throw that on the spreadsheet. It's one of those things that we can do a quick glance and see it there. That would be helpful. Procedural question, and sorry to have an obnoxious procedural question. First, I do think it would be great to invite this individual to receive the board's thanks. But as far as designating to the superintendent to write the letter and to make that invite, do we need to amend this motion to include that?
No.
I don't think so. Are we all set to vote? Okay. All those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Next item, policies. May I have a motion, please?
Move to approve the first reading of FF, naming and renaming of school buildings and facilities.
Needs a second. Public comment, board discussion.
So board policy FF, naming and renaming of schools, is not a required policy. It was last reviewed in January of 2022. Policy committee recognizes the importance of naming the buildings within the RSU and have recently, as last year, had a request to do a dedication. So this is something that comes up somewhat frequently, even though we're not building new buildings regularly. Changes to this one include adding language to include the sentiment that a name shall reflect the values and identity of RSU 14. We added restrictions to naming, including recognition cannot be current employees, board members, or sitting elected officials. We also added that financial impact of changing a name to a building or doing dedication shall be considered. And finally, we added a more specific proposal submission process and designation of responsibility of that process to the superintendent.
Questions? All those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Next policy, please.
I move to approve the first reading of BEDB agenda.
Whoop, second.
Thank you, Grace. Public comment, board discussion?
Okay, so this was reviewed in June of 2009. This is one of the board governance policies we'll talk about tonight. Additional language in this policy includes clarifying language on agenda items shall related to the board performing its duties, or shall be, related to the board performing its duties as the governing body of the school unit. We also added language that reflects how an item will be considered for the agenda, namely within the scope of the board duties. It'll be timely and appropriate for consideration under laws and board policies, and that the scope of the board's duties, requests must be received within 7 days before the meeting at which the group or the individual wants the items to be addressed by the board. We also added specific timeline for delineation for agendas, so 5 days for the regular meeting, 3 days prior to a special meeting, and ASAP for an emergency meeting. We added clarification for the public and followed required practices around the superintendent providing supporting documentation for agenda items and draft meeting minutes with a directive for documents to be labeled confidential and exemptions for distribution to board members and the media or public in consideration of the Freedom of Access Act. These additions are simply for clarity and don't reflect a new process. We added language outlining Robert's Rules of Conduct specifically on how items may be added to an agenda and what options the board has at that time. This language, I'm going to read it because I think it's important just as we go into the regulation, just the highlighted yellow section. And the reason that we included this is not because it's a new process, but it's just great to have in terms of the policy for understanding, and it does outline Robert's rules very specifically. If a motion is made to add an item to the agenda, the board may, by vote, add it, decline to add it, or amend the motion in order to postpone it to a subsequent meeting or refer it to the superintendent or of a board subcommittee for further study. Because the provisions in this policy regarding distribution and posting of the agenda are intended to provide public notice of the business that will be considered, the board should limit additions to the agenda to items of business that cannot reasonably wait until the next board meeting, regular board meeting. A special meeting may be a more desirable way to address one or more important and/or controversial issues that arise between meetings and cannot wait until the next regular meeting, as there will be more opportunity for advance notice. Legal cross we did add for this one was 20 MRSA subsection 1477, which is defining a quorum. We also added the cross of KEB on this one, public concerns and complaints, to this policy. And then I'll talk about the regulation next.
Questions or comments on this one? All those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Next policy, please.
I move to approve the first reading of BEDBR agenda format.
Second.
Public comment, board discussion.
So this is the regulation to the policy called agenda format. This regulation serves to outline how a meeting agenda is structured. Changes include the addition of an item on the agenda called approval of the agenda. up until this point, we had any changes to the agenda. So even though it looked like there was just one edit here, I just wanted to outline the implications. So we added approval of the agenda, and this would be after the Pledge of Allegiance. The language previously was adjustments. This typically includes items that the superintendent would have notified the board of in advance, such as today. We had that happen after the agenda was published 5 days prior to the regular meeting. The policy committee is proposing these changes because it serves legal and procedural and practical purposes. A few of those would be that it establishes the official order of business, ensures everyone agrees on what will be addressed, prevents any disputes later in the meeting about what is or isn't allowed, and is a core practice rooted in Robert's Rules of Order. It also protects the board from procedural challenges, as once it's adopted, the agenda becomes the legally recognized outline of the meeting, and it shows that a topic was properly included, board members had notice, and that the meeting proceeded in an orderly, transparent way and is compliant with open meeting laws, of course, such as FOA. It also allows the board to add, remove, or reorder items, as before voting, any board member can request an urgent item, move an item later in the meeting, or remove something not ready for discussion, and the vote ensures that any changes reflect the will of the majority, not just the chair or the superintendent, as they are charged with the drafting of the agenda within their designated roles. And lastly, and importantly, this is a safeguard so the public sees exactly what will be discussed and nothing's added or changed without a majority vote, and last-minute surprise additions are limited. So once the agenda is approved, the meeting business can begin, and motions, public comment, deliberations, and voting would then proceed. Since the agenda is only a draft until adopted, last-minute additions can be proposed, and that would go through the Robert's Rules process of I move to amend the agenda, etc. I'd just like to reiterate that we did just add a section to the policy above that goes with this regulation that notes the board should limit additions to the agenda to items of business that cannot reasonably wait until the next regular board meeting due to the provisions in the policy regarding distribution and posting of the agenda to provide public notice of 5 days.
Joe?
Yeah, sorry, this is absolutely a last-minute thought. I wonder about adding one more line on here following board roundtable and before committee reports to actually call out a student representative report. One, so we have it as a standing agenda item, and two, so we always remember to seek that, because I think we get a lot of valuable information from that.
Okay, can I ask Maggie if she, okay. So, there have definitely been some meetings where I forgot to check in with our student rep to say, hey, if there's anything you had to say. My only fear with that would be to put them on the spot or feel like they have to say something at every meeting, because they don't. She can say what she wants to say whenever, but she doesn't have to, and I only hesitate for that reason. Otherwise, I think, anytime we get student input, that's great. I don't know if you want to speak on this or no. Okay.
If I had, I could come prepared with more things to say. Usually what I have to say, Mr. Howell covers in his superintendent's report.
He steals my stuff too, I guess.
But I can come prepared. I wouldn't mind doing a report. That'd be fine.
I'll let you go first.
It's okay. I can think of more obscure things.
How do other board members feel about this?
It's my understanding that it's optional that boards have a student rep as well. So, we could amend a regulation as easy as if there wasn't a student rep. It could be an item, if maybe we could ask at the beginning of that season if there was a change in the student that they felt that they wanted to contribute in that way to the meetings at the start of their term.
Grace?
I was really more mixed until I was thinking in terms of, I think it just helps to elevate student voice, to have it actually listed. And so, yes, we have a student on the board, we have a student rep here. Yes, sometimes there's something you want to be sure we're hearing about, but to be sure that students are recognizing that there's a student rep on the board, for what it's worth, for parents to see that as well. And it just is really making it clear that we're including the student voice in our discussions and deliberations. Thanks. So I would be in favor of doing that.
Okay. And saying I have no report is also fair, just to be clear. I apologize, Joe. Can you repeat where you suggested it would go?
First and foremost, I apologize. It wasn't my intent to call you out. That was not the goal. And certainly, I want to reiterate, no report is a perfectly reasonable answer. I was suggesting coming immediately following the board roundtable, or could be in front of the board roundtable. I don't know that it much matters, but somewhere in that area.
I mean, if we're going to make this change between first and second read, I'd love a decision. Is it 6.5 or is it 7.5? By consensus, are we fine with adding that to the second read? All right, I only wanted to add a little bit to what Jody said. Not a whole lot of this I guess the change is prior to approval of the agenda, our current practice would stand of how you could add items or change the agenda by a majority vote. After this point, if we were to make this change where we all voted on the agenda by a majority vote, you still could modify the agenda, but it would be a 2/3 weighted vote. That's not a thing we've had in the past, and I just think that's important to consider if this is a change we want to make. A lot of boards do approve their agenda. A lot of organizations do vote on their agenda prior to. We just haven't by practice. I don't think I have an opinion. I just think it's important to know that if we were going to make this change to vote on our agenda, the agenda can pass by a majority, but any changes after that point are a 2/3 weighted vote, which I haven't done the math of how many people that would be. But it's just something to note. Any other discussion on this? All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Marge.
I just have one question. Basically, why did we put it in? I mean, why did the policy committee decide to put it in? I guess that's my question. I mean, I don't care one way or the other. I'm just curious.
So one of our committee members did bring it up, and the conversation really was talking about, to Christina's point, just really that it is a standard practice and that many organizations use it, and that their agenda is a draft up until the point where the majority of the board by a vote does adopt the meeting business for that prior to that meeting. And the process of it not being voted by a majority is shorted by a number of issues, one of which we've run into this year already in terms of how we add items before and after, to Christina's point about a weighted vote versus a majority. And so we wanted to provide some clarity there. It didn't come out of any one thing, but as we discussed it, it became very clear that that's best practice, and that if we went that direction, that it would make it clearer for us then to delineate items that were urgent and could go to either a special meeting or a subsequent meeting, and that the majority vote would happen in public as well for an agenda that was set and voted on by the majority of the board. Anyone else want to comment?
Okay, so you're formalizing the agenda. Okay, great, thanks.
I just want to add to that because I don't know how long we debated this in policy, certainly not the longest one we've debated, but I was definitely hesitant to make this suggestion. I think that perspective is important. And, my original perspective was I didn't want to make this change because, like Jody has said, the superintendent and I draft the agenda, and it felt like me proposing that nobody can make any changes after this point. It was much harder to change the agenda. But I think the alternative perspective is that actually we all get a voice in approving it to say, yes, this is actually what we want to accomplish tonight. So I have moved a little bit on that. Do you have any more last minute thoughts before we vote?
No.
Okay, all right. All those in favor? Okay, motion carries. I lost my spot here, sorry. Next policy, please.
I move to approve the first reading of BF, Policy Development by the Board of Directors.
Second?
Public comment, board discussion.
So this is a bit odd. We're talking about a policy development policy in policy. So again, this is under board governance. We reviewed this one in June of 2010. We're recommending a nomenclature change to align with standard to BG from this one to align with MSMA. Changes include the addition of the National School Boards Association definition of policy in brief as written, statements that establish the purpose and general program of a school system. So policies provide a framework for the school board's vision, goals, and objectives, setting a clear direction for the district's administration and staff while allowing for flexibility in day-to-day operations. Did want to just take a moment to review structurally the components of a policy. I think it's good to provide context because we're talking about a policy development policy. So purpose of a policy is to set forth the purposes and programs of the school in general terms. The function would be to set forth a foundation framework for the efficient operation of the school. It should define goals, objectives, reflect the board vision, define roles and responsibilities, and include measurable outcomes as they often do. Policies are created by the board, and then the policy then selects a superintendent to implement them. The framework should operate within the guidelines of federal laws, statutes, and the rules of the regulatory agencies, and they're meant to be interpreted in a way that guides the administration and allows for flexibility in daily operations. We really strive to ensure that we try to provide least restrictive language and try to provide as much flexibility as possible, as we did with our cell phone policy recently as an example. Yes, I just wanted to provide that structure. Other additions to this policy include expanded language on when policies become effective, any triggering events for review, and policy development collaboration language, so that it's a more collaborative approach instead of a designated process whereby the superintendent is expected to do the bulk of the work and report to committee.
Discussion? Jody just said it, but I just wanted to highlight that we are giving ourselves the option of making a future effective date other than immediately upon the second read, which we have historically used. That would have been super handy doing cell phone policy. So that's one that we kind of held on to make sure that it wasn't not going to become effective mid-year. This just gives us the flexibility if we're in a situation like that. Again, we can just set the date where we need it to be. So I'm really excited to see that change. All those in favor? Motion carries. Next policy, please.
BF-R.
I'm sorry, so your mic's not on?
It is now.
Can you-
Gotcha.
Thank you.
All right. I move to approve the first reading of the BF-R policy adoption process.
Second.
Public comment? Board discussion?
So policy development procedure, this one goes with the previous policy. We're also proposing nomenclature change from BF-R to BG-R. The regulation was reviewed in June of 2010. This regulation outlines how to adopt, review, revise, and delete policies of the Board of Directors here. Changes include noting that it is not the responsibility of the superintendent to research, review suggestions, nor solicit input from stakeholders, prepare draft policies, and make recommendations solely to the board. This is a collaborative process. We've made an edit to reflect that, and that's important to clarify. We added directive for the policy committee to make reports to the board regarding its activities and status of policy development. We also added language that outlines the cadence of review, setting a goal of a 5-year review of all policies with an annual review of required policies. We added language that notes that any changes that are not substantive to policies in our agenda after review will be stamped with a review date, and the board will be notified in the board packet, whereas something with changes that will be brought to the board for first and second read. And we've also added some Robert's Rules language around the process between first and second read, and added language that spells out clearly that if a policy is not passed by majority vote, that the process is ended unless the board by vote takes action to table further consideration of the policy or otherwise dispose of that policy.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next policy?
I move to approve the second reading of BE Board of Directors meetings.
Public comment? Board discussion?
So we had a couple of requested edits on this one in my notes. Someone did them though, whoever did them, thank you. When I went to check, I'm not sure who did it, but we had a request to add legal to reflect the executive session cross and then to revert to the original title. So those are the two changes between first and second read on that one.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Next policy, please.
I move to approve the second reading of GCOA-supervision and evaluation of professional staff.
Second.
Public comment, board discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next item, executive session.
I move to approve going into executive session to discuss the superintendent's evaluation pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 405-6A and not return to regular meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries.